Hello, folks. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kind for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today, we have another European Parliament member that is going to be speaking about AI in Europe, a little bit of healthcare, etc. Pretty important stuff that we need to be cognizant of. Hope you stick around to hear that. Likewise, we have Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Democrat from Illinois, the Chicago area, is going to talk about voters actually making sure that we keep the vote safe and how we do that, what we're going to do. And I want to touch a little bit on Mr. Governor Newsom and his refusal to accept a 2%, which is a generous 2% tax on wealth, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. E2247 throws into the chat, he says, now that 47 has surrendered in losing his illegal unnecessary war in Iran, we deserve to know why is the Strait of Hormuz closed again since yesterday? Answer, and he answered his own question, it is Netanyahu. Of course it is Netanyahu, the criminal in chief, the genocidal maniac in chief, and you name it, that's who he is. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great program to you. Welcome aboard, Terry DeFord, Beth Ferguson, Penelope, M.H. Evan, Brittany, how you doing, Preciosa? We also have Carol Andrade and Nancy Williams in the other chat. First in the house today was Patrick Magner. Says meow out of Houston, Texas. We've got Paul Fleming out of Powder Springs, Georgia. Welcome, Paul. Gene Deigel out of Alvin, Texas. Yvette, I don't think I've seen you in a couple of days. Yvette is right out of Atlanta, Georgia. Great having you here, beautiful. We have, para ver, ¿quién más estás aquí? ¿Quién más está aquí? We have E2247 giving us a scoop on the Palestinian genocide as well. We have, para ver, ¿quién más? Lee Grant. Lee Grant in from Montgomery County. He says, happy Juneteenth. Man, I don't think I called out the word Juneteenth this morning on my program. Shame on me. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Happy Juneteenth. We also have Lisa Blair out of Atlanta, Georgia. Buenos días, buenas tardes, preciosa. ¿Cómo estás? Robert Rosen, Robert Smith, welcome aboard. All right, let me go ahead and get that thing started right away. Let's go ahead and talk to Alexandra Geese, and then we'll continue thereafter. Para ver cómo lo comenzamos ahora. Ahí lo tienes. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today I'm honored to have Alexandra Geese from Germany. She is a member of the European Parliament. First of all, thank you very much for being here at Netroots. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in Parliament?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be on the podcast. I'm a member of the European Parliament from Germany and for the Green Party. So my party is the party that fights for climate, nature, civil rights, social equality, and so on. And I personally work a lot on tech policy. That's one of the reasons why I come to the US a lot, fighting against the tech bros, fighting against fascism. So I think this is where we're in this fight together.
You know, I'm glad to hear that. Now, for some reason, when I didn't realize you're also part of the Green Party. I don't know, that's just kind of slipped my mind. But you're also, I believe, a translator in the European Parliament.
Well, that was my previous career. I was a simultaneous interpreter, a conference interpreter, and I worked in a lot of places. I lived in Italy for 20 years. I'm originally from Germany, but then I went to Italy, and that was basically my job before entering politics. But I also translated 4 years. I was an interpreter in the European Parliament before I changed roles. Yes, that's true.
Well, I just wanted to show the versatility of the members of the European Parliament. Now, interestingly, one of the big buzz, you came over here to talk tech policy, etc. One of the intricacies or issues right now is AI. AI is the magical word, and I want to know what the sense of how do Europe sense that takeover is going to occur? What's the feeling about AI?
I think we are still struggling with developing a European vision of AI. So there's this dominant narrative coming from the US that says, well, AI is going to fix everything. I doubt that. It also says European is lagging behind because the big AI companies now are American or in a minor way Chinese, and Europe doesn't really have anything big in terms of companies or technology. And they say this is because you have too much regulation. This is the fight against regulation. What actually we do in Europe, and we're quite successful in doing it, is protecting people and making sure that people have access to jobs, to public schools. We have universal health care. So a lot of things that you are fighting for in the US, we already have them. And the tech bosses are trying to take them away and taking our rights away. We also have comprehensive privacy regulation against surveillance. And so there's this big fight right now where the tech bros and the US administration are saying, well, if you want to catch up with us and have big, great tech companies, you have to give all this away. And I do not agree with that. I'm fighting for a European vision. I think AI can be beneficial in a bunch of areas, for example, medical research, improving the resource efficiency of our industries, in the engineering industry, for example, in the automotive industry. I think it can help to do something to help to save the climate in terms of grid efficiency. But the dominant AI model coming from US tech companies right now, which is based on large language models, is not doing that. It's doing exactly the contrary. It's ruining the planet because it takes up enormous amounts of electricity, of energy, the water consumption, and you're experiencing that in the US right now. And it's taking people's jobs away. So this is not the kind of model we want. And so in Europe, there's this fight between those who want to just take over the US model and say we just have to catch up and run after the US and implement everything that the US administration is telling us to do. And the people like me and many others who are saying, no, we need a European version of AI. We need a European version of tech, where tech and AI really serve the people and do not destroy the planet, but rather save it. So this is a little bit, the tensions we are living right now in Europe.
I've been trying to push this in the United States as a concept. And I wish, I don't know if Europe is as well, but right now we have the tech bros are in the United States, and I don't know who would be considered the technical companies that do AI in Europe and beyond. But my question to you is, when or who will pick up that mantra and say that AI really cannot be owned, just like there are certain things that cannot be owned. AI can be maybe rented, but AI can't be owned because it is a composite knowledge of us all. I mean, there's nothing in AI that was created by AI. It was just mimicking the knowledge of everything we know, done, clicks, whatever. When is somebody going to come out and put a break and say, AI is nothing, it's nothing that somebody can own?
That is something we have been saying. I think that the term AI is not very precise. What exactly are we talking about? One of my favorite AI authors is Karen Howe, who wrote Empire of AI. And she has this great image where she says, well, AI doesn't mean anything, can be a rocket. It's like transport. Transport can be a rocket or it can be a bicycle. So there's some instances when you want to go to Mars, if you need to go there, you might need a rocket. Do we really want to go there? In many instances, a bicycle, when you're downtown, is maybe a better choice. Easier to park, doesn't pollute, and so on. So I think the question for Europe is more, what kind of AI do we want? And I think what we do want is smaller AI models, AI that actually serves humanity. And so it's not the abstract question of ownership, but what are the conditions within this AI is developed and operates? That is one issue. I think the other one is what you might be referring to. What about the people who actually produce the content that AI is trained on? What about the creators? What about the authors? What about the artists? What about the filmmakers, the actors? But also about the journalists who write the articles that AI feeds on. So this is a big discussion we have in Europe because we have a lot of people producing this content, and US AI companies are just taking it and that's monetizing it through advertising to our own people and taking the money away. So one angle we are approaching is under copyright. Because one thing is having the philosophical concept of you can't own it, but I'm a policymaker, so I have to operationalize that in some way. And one angle is copyright. The problem with copyright is that the rights holder, this is what technically the people who create the content are called, they have to sue the AI companies, because we have legislation protecting that. And when I talk to publishers, for example, they will tell me, well, I know Google is stealing that content because I own the local news outlet who was the only one reporting about that particular story or incident. But who am I to sue Google? They're going to outsue me in a way. I have my legal department is one lawyer, and there's no way to go against that. So what we have to tackle is that kind of power asymmetry. And that requires a bigger approach, and also that basic idea that they can't steal it. They have to pay for it. They have to ask for permission. The problem is that, like in the US, there's this magic word that's innovation. And so they come on, well, this is innovation. No, this is theft, and I think we have to have the words to call it out and act on that. So we need both things. We need the narrative to say, well, this is not innovation, this is theft. This belongs to people. If I go into a house and take your property and then I sell it to somebody else, well, this is really innovative. I got this great truck. This is really innovative. I'm so quick stealing it. It's still theft. So that's the narrative we need to establish. I think this is what you're getting at. And then decide, what should be public in that space. And the other one is actually coming up with pieces of legislation that make sure they can't steal it. And I think in the media area, one interesting idea we are working on in Europe is let's have social media that are not controlled by the same companies. So I'm working and supporting a bunch of initiatives that try to build a European infrastructure for social media, where media content could be protected against that kind of stuff. We also need technological methods to do that. That's not so easy, but we also need the spaces. And that's super important also for democracy, because what happens now on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, is that always the most violent, the most hateful, the most polarizing message goes through because it's amplified by the algorithm. And we need to change that algorithm, but that's going to be a really hard fight. We need to get rid of engagement-based ranking. At the same time, I think we need to build alternative platforms that people can go to and have a real conversation where also opinions are heard that are not hateful, that are not racist, but that promote inclusive societies, peaceful societies, that promote compromise, progressive values, and that they can be heard in the same way. And that's something we're working on. And the question is always how do we get people to go there? And getting media content there and protecting that media content against theft is a good way to do that. So that's one of the ideas we have in Europe and we're working on.
And that is so important. And the fact that it's disconcerting that when you mention that some in Europe would like to follow the American model, when the American model on everything has failed, absent the capital portion of the model. Healthcare has failed. Utilities have failed. Even for other infrastructure has failed. Why would Europeans want to adapt after they have rebuilt with universal healthcare, with childcare? Why would there be other than, please explain. You're the European here.
I think we have a problem of capture of our elites by American elites, by the current US administration and by the tech billionaires, because they're extremely influential. They use all now the government influence and all the money they have to lobby our elites. So the story we are hearing in Europe is the US is incredibly successful. There's high productivity. They have all these super innovative projects that Americans are so happy about. you do want that in Europe. Europe is lagging behind. Europe is not doing well. That's a story they are telling our governments. And I see these companies like Google, like Palantir, having very, very easy access to our governments, having very easy access to the European Commission. And when these kinds of Europeans come to the US, they don't go out, to the suburbs. They don't go out to the countryside to see how real Americans live, how they struggle, how they have 3 jobs, how they don't have time to see their friends and family, how they don't have access to health care. They don't see that. They stay in 5-star hotels, or they go to Silicon Valley and go into these really, nice looking companies, these nice spaces, and all looks very new. And they never go to the places where the working people live in America, who are the big majority. They don't see that. They don't see how, when they have to go from one place to another to take a plane, they don't see how the public infrastructure for normal people breaks down. They don't see the electricity bills of people in Virginia.
Right.
And this is the message that I'm trying to take back to Europe. The average European has so much better quality of life than the average working American. The problem is that a lot of our owners of our companies also believe in that kind of message, and they think, well, everything is better in the US and productivity is so much higher. No, productivity isn't higher. Just Americans work so many more hours, and they're trying to impose that on us as well and say, well, you have all this privilege, all this health care, you don't work enough. And this is why we are lagging behind. But, who's lagging behind? Americans are lagging behind in terms of quality of life. And you can measure that in life expectancies. Europeans live longer, actually. This is a very clear measure. This is what nobody ever talks about. So I think we need the American voices to come to Europe and say, well, you have amazing quality of life. We want to learn from how you're doing that and tell our people, well, you're actually doing well, and let's work together to do better on both sides of the Atlantic.
It is. I find it shameful that people don't understand the difference between averages and medians.
Exactly.
They don't understand those differences. And if there are 10 Americans living extraordinarily well and 100, or rather 90, living poorly, it looks good on paper, but it's not the case. And that's why I'm glad that we have, first of all, that you come here and you encourage others to, hey, you need to go. You don't only need to centralize in the United States. You need to expand your wings to bring Europe into the real America, not Europe into America, but Europe into the real America, and let them see what is going to, what's really happening. It's an interesting, all we spoke about was AI, but you were able to evolve that AI into actual social, a social domain, which I think is so very important. But let me just ask you a little off topic with respect to what the war in Iran is doing to the economies of the European Union.
Yeah, happy to take that question. May I go just back a little bit just to give you an example?
Please do.
Just 2 points. I mean, why do I come from AI to societal issues and the broader picture? Because AI is not a technology. It's not even a bunch of technologies. It's an infrastructure of power. It's an infrastructure that allows the people who already hold most of the power to concentrate that power even more. And that is a global infrastructure. And this is why we're in this together.
Thank you for making that is the most important statement you have made thus far. That is the most important statement you've made thus far. Going to Iran now, the disruption that you're having with the oil supplies to Europe, given that Europe gets a lot of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz and also through the other entry. What are your thoughts?
Well, the energy prices in Europe have gone up, and this is a real issue for our industries. I'm from Germany, so we are a heavily industrialized country, and we have a lot of energy-intensive industry, chemical industry. We have steel industry, and we want to keep it. Frankly, we don't want to have it to leave. And we already had high energy costs previously. This is a very specific German situation because we bought a lot of Russian gas. And when Putin started the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we had to wean off the Russian gas very quickly. So now,
let me stop you a second, because That sort of upsets me. Let me tell you why. You said you had to wean yourself off of Russian gas. Don't you really mean that the United States pressured Germany to wean itself off of Russian gas?
In that case, no. I think there were U.S. interests to get us hooked on U.S. gas.
Right.
That is true, but I think it was the right step to take, and I really defend that.
Okay.
To not keep supporting Putin's war economy.
Okay.
I have been to Ukraine. I've seen the suffering of the Ukrainian
Okay,
people.
got you.
I think it is extremely important that we do not support monetarily through the buying gas, the Russian war effort.
Okay.
We really have to make sure that Putin doesn't have the money to continue the war in Ukraine. So I think it is very important that we got off the Russian gas for Germany, but it was a huge effort for our industry. It absolutely was. And we are stuck with energy costs that are a lot higher than the previous German government, which the Green Party was an important part of, really made sure that we increased the supply of renewable energy. And we were quite successful. We have a share of 60% now in renewable for electricity, for example. We started a really enormous build-up. Pardon?
What percentage of your electricity was from
it's 60% now, 60.
Is it still 60%?
It's still 60%,
because the right wing has been trying to tell the United States citizens that Germany tried it and Germany is failing at
that is absolutely not true.
I know it's not true,
failing.
but I know that with some of the crises that you had, you may have had to power up some coal plants, I believe, or something to that effect.
We used to have a lot of coal. Yeah, we're trying to phase out coal. Traditionally, we had a lot of coal and gas.
Right.
So we are trying to phase out coal because coal is really the main climate killer.
Right.
And we're working on that, and we are replacing it with wind power, basically, and solar power.
Right.
And during that government, people felt really empowered. And what was the really interesting thing that the government thought, and all the studies say, you have to go for wind power because wind is really extremely powerful. We have the North Sea, so that is a resource we have.
Right.
And what happened, we did build out wind power, and we took down some regulation that was slowing it down. So we really accelerated wind power. But what people did is they really responded to that call, and they put a lot of solar panels on their roofs. So the build out in terms of solar power exceeded every expectation that government had. That was really, really amazing. So there was really this common impulse to search of renewable energy. So that was successful. The problem is that the current government is sort of taking out the incentives out of the system to feed more renewable power in, because the problem is more in the grid, and you have the same problem because of the data centers. The grids are not good enough to distribute. And we have the energy in the north of Germany, but the industry is more in the center and the south of Germany. So the transmission is the problem. It's very costly. And this is what we should be working on. We shouldn't be scaling down renewable energy. So this government, like 3 days before President Trump started the war against Iran, came out with this package saying, we're going to use the incentive for renewable energy because it's too costly on the grid, and we don't want to deal on that with that. And I mean, there's gas, and gas is fine. And then the gas prices soared. And so now we are stuck sort of with this conundrum that the current government doesn't want to increase renewable energy because they don't want to solve the grid problem because it's too costly. And at the same time, gas and oil are becoming very, very expensive. We don't have, most of our oil doesn't go through the Strait of Hormuz. That's more a problem that Asia has. We have long-term contracts.
It goes through the Mediterranean.
But, we have long-term contracts, And, but, the impact on Asia is so big that now Asia is ready to pay anything to get it. So we are competing, and, the long-term impact is really high energy costs. And what we are risking is really a deindustrialization because we are not able to produce enough energy. So what we should be doing is really work on the grid very, very quickly and continue the build out of renewable energies. At the same time, also focus on energy efficiency and decide very well where do we want to put our energy. And this is where the US comes back in, not only through the Iran war, but also they're trying to build data centers in Europe as well. And so there starts to be a competition for energy between US data centers, European data centers, and our classic traditional energy intensive industry.
Well, PM Alexandra Geese. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
Uh, what can the US and Europe, how can progressive movements in the US and in Europe work together to make the world a better place for both of us? I think connecting very closely, because when I say in Europe, I don't like this AI model. I want AI that serves the people. I want social media that serves the people. People tell me, oh, you're anti-American. This is going against American companies, so you are anti-American. And I'm not, I'm here. This is the reason, because I think we have very common interests.
That's an easy answer.
And when I hear Americans at this conference go on the stage and say, all we want are safe jobs, universal health care, and public schools.
Right.
I say, well, we have that in Europe. We can tell you how to do that. We can help you. We also have legislation to rein in the tech giants. We just can't enforce it. So I think what we need to do is talk to each other more, get your voices over to Europe and tell European people, what the US president wants from you when they say they want to deregulate, they want to simplify, what the tech bros want when they say you want to catch up. They want you to live in a world without healthcare, without public schools, without affordable housing, without safe jobs. You don't want that.
No.
And that is not anti-American. That is pro-American. That if we in Europe say, no, we like our way of living and we want to defend it. At the same time, I think we can learn a lot from US politicians, I have to say, on how you mobilize your communities, how you do grassroots organizing. Yesterday I heard the people from Minnesota speaking, and I really had goosebumps.
Yes.
That was, everybody in Europe was following what happened in Minnesota after the murder of Renee Good and before, and that was so amazing. And hearing how they organized it, how they're doing that, I think this is what we can learn. And what we need to do is to build common narratives around tech.
Exactly.
Because I think we want the same thing. We want our children to be safe. We want to be able to talk to each other without hating each other. We want to keep up our health care. We basically want the same thing. So let's get that message through on how to get that. How do we regulate tech? How do we keep our kids online safe? How do we make safe online spaces with free speech for everybody where we can exchange? This is what we want from both sides of the Atlantic. And how do we build AI that serves the people and not the billionaires? So let's talk to each other and how to do that. And then when you elect the Democrat in 2028, make that happen.
European Union Parliament member Alexandra Geese. And I got it right.
That's correct.
Thank you so kindly for this interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions, anything anybody wants to mention, give me a call, 281-823-7747. Again, that is 281-823-7747. Let's see what we've got in the chat. Para ver, subiendo arriba. Welcome aboard, Tim, to the chat as well. Mo guest, welcome aboard. Guesteron, welcome aboard. Yep, wind and solar, which is what we need. That is absolutely correct. Okay, have a great Brittany, welcome and enjoy your work. I know you're driving over there now. Para ver quién más está diciendo algo. Who else is saying something? What did DR do with taxpayer money? Gabbard showed it all. Oh Lord. Oh Lord, all well, I can't help you. I'm sorry. So Netanyahu is not under the control of 47, who has said that Netanyahu is under his control. Israel has decoupled from the US, but POTUS refuses to act in line with that truth. The thing about it is Israel can only decouple for so long because for most of the rest of the world, Israel is considered a pariah, which they are. Okay, the government of Israel, they are a pariah. We also have, para ver, why should U.S. allow Section 224 or 219, as the case may be, to go forward in the fiscal year 27, the NDAA, giving away any bit of U.S. sovereignty to any nations? We shouldn't. Brother Patrick says every government that has subsidized wind and solar outpaced economic growth over those that did not. Very true. Again from Patrick, the United States in building to 100-fold the data centers than the rest of the world with no evidence that it will benefit us. Yep. And let's say what did Big Mo Pfeffer says? If it is the case that building solar and wind causes higher economic output, why is Europe and China in economic meltdown? I don't know what you have been reading, but China is definitely not in economic meltdown. And right now, Donald Trump is instrumental in affecting the economic progress of Europe. But as far as China is concerned, I think you guys better wake up, because by the time those of you who are who continue to believe the ridiculous narrative from right wing sources, by the time you realize how far advanced China has gone, it'll be too late. You would have destroyed the country. But that is the reason why we have got to not only win in this year, but we have got to beat you guys so bad that eventually you turn around and say, oh my God, thank you for beating us this bad, because we would have taken the country down the road and we would have been what we would call involuntary traitors. Okay? We're preventing you from being involuntary traitors. Some of you are voluntary traitors, but involuntary traitors. Let's go and listen to what Congresswoman Delia Ramirez had to say about voter protection. Let's go ahead and do that right now, and then we'll continue the program.
Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today I'm honored to be with Congresswoman Delia Ramirez. How are you doing today,
I'm
my
doing
friend?
good.
Great. First of all, what do you think this is the current state compared to what we spoke about before of
Yeah.
the country?
I would say to you that the state of the union is resilient and strong.
Mhm.
And while I understand that there is every single reason to feel like you're hopeless, and that one more attack and another 72 billion for DHS and the gerrymandering is taking Black representation in the South, that we are in chaos, I also refuse in every single way
Mhm.
to give them a win that they think that they've broken us. So I think that we're in a state of resilience and persistence and fight.
Now, another thing, I'm concerned about the election. How concerned are you about shenanigans,
Mhm.
let's say in more than likely urban areas in the country?
Well, I think we should be clear that the shenanigans have already started.
Mhm.
If they can win in free and fair elections, they're going to try to cheat, and they're going to try to gerrymander districts to take away representation, which is what you're seeing in Tennessee, you're seeing in Florida, you've seen in Texas, and
Right.
all over the South. So that's already happening. And I think it's really important for us to have a real conversation about how we support states,
Mhm.
especially in critical places like Arizona and like Texas and Louisiana and other places where they're going to try to steal elections, to ensure that we are doing the kind of election protection that sometimes you end up doing in other countries.
Right.
We're having to do it.
It's
We're having
amazing
to
that
do it
we're doing
here.
what we used to have to do in other countries.
That's right. So you look, a lot of us have done poll. I don't know if you ever heard of polls, like the people that are the poll watchers.
Yes, absolutely.
We do it in Chicago.
Really?
We've always had poll watchers because sometimes a little machine politics
Yeah,
will be what
exactly.
machine politics will be. But we're telling people, look, you've done some of this already. Now we may have to just deploy you around the country to really be there and do the election observation necessary to ensure we have free and fair elections. But you look, I think they're going to do what they're going to do. And we, over the next few weeks, I'm a co-chair of the Anti-Corruption and Democracy Task Force. We're going to be unveiling a set of standards and policies that we're going to work on to try to ensure that we protect people's ability to go and vote, whether they're in Illinois, Texas, or Arizona. And what does that mean in terms of the integrity of the polling location? The vote by mail ballots, and certainly what happens inside of the polling location.
Now, will you have legal backing for that, given that the president takes the executive?
I think it's going to be important for Congress to ensure that we are providing any of the funding necessary to do so. And I think it's going to be hard, right, with the
Mhm.
president that we have right now. But I also think it's important for people to know that this is where working with the states and working with the municipalities and checking in with the secretaries of states across the board. And I know it's hard when you're thinking about Arizona, not so much Arizona, but you're thinking about Texas
Right.
or Mississippi and other places. But I think this is not just a strategy that you're going to take on one way. You have to have a multi-pronged strategy to ensure that you extend the most protections as possible.
Oh, one last question. I know you're up for time. I know right now in Congress, I don't know what percentage of progressives are going to make it. And what are your thoughts on that? Real progressives make it into Congress?
I think that we have a very good chance. But look, I am a unapologetic progressive lefty squad, whatever people want to call me. But I think that I reflect everyday people in America.
That's who
Everyday
yes.
people in America want to have elected officials who operate with integrity, who understand that their struggle is real, that are going to fight like hell so that they can have good housing, health care, a pension, dignified retirement, and their kids are going to have good schools and safe communities. That's what progressives fight for every day.
Congresswoman, let me tell you, I've done the polls or seen the polls. Every policy that's supported by progressives have north of 60%.
That's
some
exactly
north
right.
of 80%.
And if you actually go talk to some of these communities, especially rural communities that are typically Republican, and you don't talk about party, you just talk about issues, they're with us too. So for all these Democrats that believe that moving to the center is the way to go, moving to the center is why Donald Trump is president today.
Thank you. That's exactly right. I know you have a commitment, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so kindly for giving me this time, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez.
Thank you. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Igual.
All right, that was Delia Ramirez. How you doing, Patrick Magner? What's going on, my friend?
I'm doing fine.
Wait,
I thought
before
that I was
be-
with you
before
live,
you
but I guess
start,
I was lagging a little bit because when I called, you were inviting phone calls. And
before
what
you
I heard
talk
from
though,
her,
before you talk, I want to give all of you who, including yourself, who were producers of all the videos that I did in Philadelphia at the Netroots Nation 2026 convention. Remember, every single politician, activist, or movement person that you see come on these videos, it is done courtesy of several of our PDR posse members, and they're listed at the on the splash at the end of every single one of the videos. And to all of you, I want to thank you, and we should all thank you for bringing all this information. Continue, please, Patrick.
well, I have to say that you made a sacrifice to go there to make all these interviews, and there's been a couple of Green Party members from the EU that I really appreciated hearing from, because I kind of, the Green Party here has some great members, but the good members aren't publicized, and the bad members are. The results in the last election kind of got me discouraged about the Green Party here, and I shouldn't have let that happen. But I'll leave that at that. But
Well,
I didn't know if you.
I want to amplify that. The Green Party in the United States
Sure.
is not the Green Party in Europe. The Green Party in Europe is
No.
very, very effective, and it generally forms a part of many coalition governments on the left. So, look, they're effective. If you listen to what Bernadette Scuderi and Miss Gizzi had to say, one from Germany, one from Italy, they're actually very effective. But continue, my brother.
Well, yeah, and because they're a part of coalitions, and that's something again that we need to look at the effectiveness of and this isn't what I call, but effectiveness of other countries' models. If in many countries in Europe, if 20% of the people vote for one party, that party gets 20% representation.
Exactly.
Whereas here we have a winner take all, and I don't know how many people from the United States actually understand that.
They don't.
Had our elections been behind their model, progressives would still have had very close to half the voice that is in Congress and the Senate right now, and that would have changed everything. I
It
believe.
is a is it no not that it's the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, I think you're being generous when you say almost 50%. Again, if you ask the people what their values are and what they want progressive values. They say so. Not only that, the Senate is one of the biggest anti-democratic agencies in government, bar none, because that California and South Dakota get the same amount of senators. It makes absolutely no sense. That skews the progressive nature of our country in the first place. But continue, my brother.
Well, I wanted to shift over a little bit to AI, which I think is on task for what we've been talking about the last few days with the
Hmm.
initial public offering and the quote unquote success of billionaires here. I've been for several weeks now. I've been looking for an opportunity to give you concessions as far as the argument we had. And this is going to go a little bit. Do you have time or no?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I
This
wanted
is
to give
your
you some
show, man.
concessions when I mentioned that AI was a black box and that nothing came in and out. I think that was when Zarnig called in and you made an argument for it. And I have to admit that when you were arguing it, it made sense to me. But with everybody else I had read about and listened to interviews, it wasn't jiving. And I was thinking, well, Alberto's very, very smart, but he hasn't been in school for a while. But I've now realized and come to the conclusion that you are 100% correct, that there is no black box with this, and that a lot of the people that are saying that might be selling the American version or model of AI, and that they're being very deceptive. That this AI is not what we think it is. It's to me, it's looking like it's a complete failure, and the bubble might pop quickly or probably pop more slowly, but we're putting money in all of our investments into a scam is what I've come to
Let me
believe.
give
These
some.
large language models.
Yeah, let me give
Go ahead.
some a little bit of legs to what you're saying, right? And let me be very honest with you. I have been programming computers. I started programming computers when we used to do it with ones and you go to a patch panel and you put the ones and zeros for the jump instructions and all of that in software. The von Neumann computing model has not changed. We've gotten sequential and parallel processors working together. None of that has changed. So, no matter what you think about AI, fundamentally, it all breaks down into writing a piece of software that runs on a computer and how you interpret the database of data that you put in. The logic and intelligence is in how the database is interpreted. And when I listen to these people talk about AI being a black box and AI taking over the world and it's going to do all these things, it's amusing to me from a person who don't didn't start programming with 5GL or 4GL or 3GL. These are language models where today it sits on top of it's a higher level. I mean, people in computer science don't even know how the processor does things because of the high level of computing that's done in today's world. So I have always known, my dear brother, that a lot of what we're seeing is hype. AI is very good, don't get me wrong. I mean, when you're doing it to analyze a whole lot of data, the basic thing is put in weight on data that is already known so that it can validate its veracity. But there's not, and as far as doing the interpretation, as far as analyzing pictures and all of that, again, it is just scanning what we all know. But continue, my brother.
Yeah, it's actually not any better. It might be a little bit faster, but it's not any better than what a human being can do.
Thank
And
you.
you are right. It can't write its own programs. it might debug a little bit, but it's very bad at that. The only thing that I've read so far now that I'm in this camp where I'm listening to the people that say it's a scam, the large language models are pretty good at reading and summarizing, but not great. And so that can take over maybe a paralegal or something like that, and they can produce images. And the amount of slop that we see out there, just the amount of AI rewriting, and it's very easy once you start looking to identify it as being a problem or being AI generated. Shows that it's not even that great at that. And I think that's what you're using it for. You use it to summarize something.
That's what. Let me tell you my workflow. Yeah, I think all of you get my emails and so forth several times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think it is, and I don't lie that I use AI in the production of my content. When you see the new images that I have, they are generated by AI. I give it inputs and AI come out with outputs. As an example, if you take a look at the blog that goes out for today, you'll see Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, you'll see Parliament member Geese and myself and some other things that I give it the inputs and say, I want this picture to be used, that picture to be used, that, and these are this is what I'm talking about. And then AI is going to take it and form it into a pleasant. I tell it I want it to look pleasant, etc., and it gives an image. It's a lot easier to do that than for me to open to open the PostScript, or not PostScript, but the graphic program, and move all these images, cut these images, etc. Hey, AI does great for me. It's an assistant. When it comes to what I do for these things that I do, I give a narrative. Like today, let's say we have this conversation. You heard me have the conversation with Jack about capitalism being a failure, and I give a long 20-minute rant on why it's a failure, and I give numerical examples, I give logical examples. I turn that into a transcript, my transcript of the words that I put out. And then I say, AI, go get the high points of what I just said and itemize those for me. And AI comes out and said, these are the main topics that you discussed, and this is the summary at the top and a thing at the bottom. I then say, I say, go ahead and give me a narrative of everything that I said in that 20 minutes. And it comes out and it tells me something. Here's the issue. And it gets most of it right, but a lot of times the logic that it used for some of the words that I say would be incorrect. I go ahead and I modify what I have to do for these particular articles. Let me tell you better. I have fed ChatGPT. I've written 5 books. I've fed ChatGPT all 5 of my books. I have fed ChatGPT the thousands of pages of articles that I've written for Daily Kos, that I've written for my website, etc. So that every tonality that comes out, including for the ads, represents everything that I have said at some point in time. Why is that great? I wrote an article. I brought this up to folks. I wrote an article that went viral a few years ago called "Middle Class Held Hostage," and AI, because I fed it this information, remembered that I had that article, "Middle Class Held Hostage," and brought some quotes out of "Middle Class Held Hostage." Bring it into it. If I had somebody research that, they would have had to go through a whole lot of searching themselves for what I do. So what I'm saying is, AI used responsibly isn't plagiarism. AI used responsibly isn't a bad thing. But what happens now is there are many people who use AI in a plagiaristic, irresponsible manner. Continue, my brother.
Well, I'm going to go out of order in my explanation and in my argument, but I need to ask you: Do you understand? You have a subscription to do all that, right?
Absolutely.
you understand that they're having to give that model up because of how expensive AI is and how poorly it's going for them? That
Yes, I do know
soon
that too.
that you're
Yeah.
going to be, yeah, you're going to be metered. So when things go well in a capitalist system, they become cheaper. This is
Right.
about to get more expensive because they're over leveraged in it. These AI data centers, they have to be rebuilt every 3 years or 4 years because of the maturing chips. And it takes 2 years for them to come online, so they're going to be 2 years old before they even get on. And so we've got these multi-billion-dollar buildings that are going to have to be rebuilt and repurposed because these chips are going to demand more and more all the time, and they're
Let
going to try and shift that onto
Mhm.
us. And earlier in the chat, I pointed out, and you read it for me, and I appreciate that we're building 10 to 100 times the number of data centers here than anywhere else, because
True.
our government without understanding was convinced by billionaires scamming us that we needed to do all this. So we're throwing everything at something that most countries know isn't going to pay off. And the billionaires that are selling it to us, like Elon Musk says, we're going to put them in outer space. Now I understand I can spend 30 minutes telling you how that's not going to work, but I'd rather just tell you that we're being sold a model that's going to go out in space that will never happen. China is already going offshore and dropping radiators 100 to 300 feet below the ocean surface to take advantage of the cooling
Hmm.
capacity of the colder, denser water.
Now,
Everything that these billionaires are telling us is
right.
a pipe dream.
Well, let me tell you this.
They're about to break our economy.
Let me just say this, okay? Because first of all, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. And welcome aboard, John Cotter. And you're correct about AI. Let me tell you where all the lies that are occurring right now, okay? You notice what you talk about, the amount of data centers that need to be built. Well, you know, for a long time, China was prevented from getting the new processors from Nvidia for all of this stuff, and they found a model that was a lot more effective and used a lot less power. And I mean, all these things, you know, whenever you stress out any particular entity, they find a way around, and a lot of times that way around turns out to be better. But here's one thing that I need to say about AI. This build out that they're talking about is really. Do you remember when we had the build out of fiber during the tech booms that went bust several years ago? And we had a lot of dark cable. We had thousands of miles of dark fiber cable all over the United States because these geniuses simply were building this stuff out to collect money out of the average person. The same thing is happening with data centers. Do you really think we need the data centers at the speed that we are getting them? Do we forget that everybody has a computer in their home that can also offload much of the work with distributed computing? There are so many things that they're not telling you about, right? As if all computation has to occur at data centers, as if all these data centers need to use the kind of the kind of CPUs that they're using. The answer is no. These geniuses are not geniuses. These geniuses are capitalists who make money from selling capital. What is Nvidia doing? Nvidia is putting out processors on credit that aren't paid for, but their books look like it's really doing better than they are. Kind of close her up for me, please, Patrick.
Okay, yeah, Nvidia that was caught selling chips to shell companies, so they weren't actually being sold. How do I want to close this out? We can close it out off topic by saying yesterday I made the point that communist countries are doing more for peace right now. The reason why oil prices didn't spike more is because China's model at getting off of oil was so good that they actually cut their oil imports by 40% and
Yes,
relied on their wind and solar.
I read that, and
That's the
I
reason
that
why we haven't gone through a bigger shock.
brother, I was flabbergasted when I said that, when I saw that, because what that means is when all the oil come back online, all the shale oil that we produce, I mean, all the fracking that we do in the United States is going to become completely unprofitable because based on what China is doing and the demand. First of all, let's China didn't really care how fast this stuff got resolved because China has such a big store of oil as it is right now. I mean, it when we talk about responsible government, people hate to say this and they think you're pro China. We're not pro China, but China is pro China. And what China has done over the last several years is some of the most responsible things, both with electronic company, environmental stuff. I am sorry. They look like how we wanted to be quite a few years ago. All right. Look, thank you very much for your input, Patrick. I think you brought some very important. I think you moved the program into an important space, talking a little bit more about AI, and we need to continue talking about this issue. All right.
You're very generous with the time you always give me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Anyway, folks, we are at the end of the program. I want to thank Patrick for calling in because this is a discussion on AI that I think we need to continue to have because he's right. There is so much that we're doing. This is not about a knowledge-based thing. This is about capital movement and extracting your wealth by all means necessary. And I hope as we continue to do these programs, we're able to put meat on the bones so that the crap that you see from some of our right wingers right now in one of our chats don't metastasize to those who refuse to do critical thinking or those who continue to have a brain that is it's not immobile but immutile. I think is one of the words that one would have to use on them. Immutable is a word that I'd like to use. But here's the thing. Lucky for us, most of our Substack folks or thinkers, rational thinkers, they are very much critical thinkers. What we have to do is expand on what you guys are learning, what you guys are teaching to make sure it gets more appeal. Anyway, folks, please consider becoming paid subscribers of our newsletter today. politicsandright.com/newsletter. politicsandright.com/newsletter. If you're on Substack, just click that subscribe button and become a paid subscriber. It's very inexpensive. If you are on our other chats or if you're listening on podcasts, go to politicsandright.com/newsletter. Become a paid subscriber. Help us do what we do best. That is inform. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out.